Well, guys, I did not see that one coming. So, Florida State just went down in a game. They were favored to win by 10.5 points in Ireland, something no one saw coming, especially after they came out and dominated during that first drive. And that was really the only time that they proved that they could physically outmatch this team. But more important than that, I think we need to talk about this Georgia Tech team. The improvement on the defensive side of the ball was evident in this game, and Florida State just had no ability to throw the ball downfield, which caused them to go down in this game. We're going to talk about everything, all the pieces, all the moving parts in this video. But before we do that, make sure that you guys like, comment, and also subscribe to the channel. We're on the way to 5,000, and with that, let's get into this video. So let's start with Georgia Tech. And I believe the new defensive coordinator, Tyler Santucci, deserves the biggest applause out of everyone. The defensive line, the defense in general, throughout this entire game, held it down. They completely dominated Florida State in the trenches where it counted most. Florida State was only able to have 98 rushing yards in this game. And I believe that is something that they did not believe was going to happen. On top of that, DJU was 19 for 27, 193 yards. He did not look that good out there at all, in my personal opinion. Now, he was able to complete some fourth down plays down the stretch, which made his overall not look too bad, but you have to get more production from DJU. And if the Florida State Seminoles cannot clean this up, their season will essentially be over. And shout out to the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They went out there and proved a lot of people wrong, doing something that was not seen as something that was possible. Let's get into the game, though. Now, let's start with that first drive. Lawrence Tarfili had a 28-yard touchdown run, which was well executed, and it looked like Florida State was going to dominate from this point. It was still early, but this is what you expected to see from Florida State. And then they come out and Wingate and get a 2-point conversion, and you're thinking to yourself like, oh no, here we go. Georgia Tech is about to get routed. However, that soon changed, and I'm sitting in the gym listening and watching the game, trying to get my iron in, trying to get my pump on, and noticing that Georgia Tech easily went down the field in the same fashion that Florida State did. So now I'm thinking to myself like, okay, this may become a shootout. Zach Pyron runs it in for the 1-yard score, and on this drive you can just see the dominance in the trenches that was being done by Georgia Tech. Now, I'm not sure if it was the assuming possession, but somewhere a little bit later on in the first quarter, Florida State has a 4th and maybe 4, and they decide to go for it. They don't get it. Georgia Tech did a fantastic job with coverage, and you think to yourself like, maybe you should have kicked that right there. But even if they would have gotten that, there's no promise that they would have won the game in OT if you add 3 to that 21-24 score. But now that we're talking about 3 points, let's talk about how Georgia Tech did a fantastic job at making Florida State kick field goals instead of driving the field and getting TDs. Florida State had 2 field goals that actually kept them afloat going into halftime. But Georgia Tech went down in the second quarter and got a score of their own. They had 14 as a way of 2 touchdowns, but Florida State had 14 because of the 2-point conversion and 2 field goals. And I think that's something in the game that a lot of people overlook. If you can hold a team to field goals and you can get touchdowns, that can make the entirety of the game completely different. But with that Jamal Hayes touchdown run from the 1-yard line and those 2 field goals, we go into halftime with a tie ball game. And it is at this point I'm thinking to myself, will Georgia Tech actually be able to pull this off? DJU is not looking that good at this point, and I would try to pronounce his last name, but I can't. I'm too country. It just comes off weird. But at the same time, it does not diminish the fact that he could not complete the passes that were open. There were a lot of key moments in the third and the fourth quarter where he just looked off key, throwing the ball a little bit too long and going out of bounds every time. Wide receivers were open on certain routes, missing corner routes. He just didn't look that good out there today. And you can kind of see it in the play calling that Mike Norvell was calling up, because there were certain moments in the game that I was thinking they would pass here and they decided to run. And so now I'm thinking to myself like, even the coach sees what is going on. His confidence wasn't there, and you can see it just trickle down into his game. Neither quarterback in this game had a passing touchdown. Hayes King was 11 for 16, 146, and again DJU was 19 for 27, 193. But Hayes made key plays when it counted, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's talk about the fourth quarter, because in the third it was just a stalemate between yards, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But the fourth quarter was very interesting with Georgia Tech scoring first. And I said I'm going to bring up Hayes King. Let me go back just a little bit. In the third quarter, right before the fourth quarter, Hayes King had a long rush that set them up inside of the 5 right before Jamal Hayes would proceed to score. Now, this is a guy who just continued to make plays throughout this entire game, and that being one of the most important plays of that entire game. When they took that lead, I was like, yeah, this is about to get bad. Now, Florida State would answer this score, but you can tell desperation was setting in. It took 2 fourth down conversions in order to make that touchdown possible, because they knew that their defense could not handle the offensive attack that Georgia Tech was putting out. They continued to dominate in the trenches, and that is exactly what happened in the last possession. Georgia Tech had the ball, and they were not going to give the ball back. Now, they almost gave the game away in the end with that much snap or whatever happened right there where it fumbled and almost took them out of field goal range, but they were able to drop a play in order to get back in field goal range, and then at that point, they set up the field goal and got it. Now, to me, it looked like that kick was almost about to go left. I'm looking at it, and the next thing you know, it just goes right past that left upright, and that's your ball game. The way that Georgia Tech wanted to win this game was exactly how they wanted. Not a whole lot of passing. They were able to dominate up front. They got their rushing yards off. In this game, they had a total 190 rushing yards with 336 yards total. And Florida State had 291 total yards, 193 passing yards with just 98 rushing yards. This is definitely not how they thought the season would begin. A team that is supposed to be contending for a national championship is now looking like they may not even make the college football playoffs at all. Can they still make it? Sure, but now you definitely have to run the table. Hope other teams like Clemson and Georgia Tech lose some games within the conference this season. Not to mention the fact that some people are high on Louisville and Virginia Tech as well. Let's not forget Miami and other teams out there who are going to be gunning for you now that it looks like you're not that strong. But that's why college football is so great. From year to year, things could change in the blink of an eye, because I saw this team as being a team that was going to contend for the ACC championship, and now it's not looking likely. And with just one game, Clemson is probably now the betting odds favorite, if they weren't already. I'm not sure what the betting odds are looking like, but at the end of the day, this is a horrible start for a team that had way bigger goals. But that just goes to show you this is a completely different team from that team from last year. And Georgia Tech as well should be very, very proud of this win. This is the first win over a top 10 opponent since they beat Florida State, who was ranked number 9 at the time, on October 24, 2015. But let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think this Florida State team is essentially done for the entirety of the year? Or do you believe that they can bounce back from this? And maybe it's just the fact that this is a completely different team with a new system and a lot of pieces that need to learn how to play together. And what are your thoughts about Georgia Tech? How good can this Georgia Tech team be for the remainder of the season? And with that,